Hey everybody, on this episode of iTalk Movies, we're talking to actor, writer, director, and producer Michael Doneger. Let's do it.
Welcome to Popcorn Talk, featuring movie discussion, news, and interviews. Popcorn Talk, we talk movies. And now, here's Popcorn Talk's iTalk Movies.
Yes.
That electric guitar.
There you go. Look at that. Welcome to iTalk Movies, an old classic reinterpreted by Weezer for today. Brings us into this episode of Talk Movies on Popcorn Talk. Of course, this is the show where we talk to the people both in front and behind the camera that bring you all that great entertainment you get to see in the theaters, at home, or on your mobile streaming device. I'm your host, Frank Moran. My guest today is a quadruple threat. Writer, director, producer, and actor. He's worked with such legends as Bruce Campbell and a personal favorite of mine, Dan Bacadal. His latest film, Brampton Zone, comes out October 19th, both in theaters as well as on digital, starring Alex Russell and Rose McIver. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Michael Doneger.
Oh, thank you. Thanks for having me.
Yes.
Really excited to be here, Frank.
All right, so what was it about the first time that you heard this Weezer song that was like, all right.
Well, so the original had always been held a place near and dear to my heart, and then when I just heard the remix of it, or just the updated version done by Weezer recently, and it's just been playing nonstop on the radio, just that electric guitar that comes in, it just like really captured my attention. And it's I don't listen to the radio that often, but every time I do, that's the song that's playing. So it's stuck in my head right now.
The radio knows, all right?
They know.
Michael's coming in the car. Let's put this up.
Yep.
So I did mention right there Dan Bacadal at the top, personal favorite of mine. He kind of chuckled a little bit.
Yeah.
He was an old improv coach for me.
Oh, really?
Yes. So
Great guy.
Yeah, fantastic. Totally psyched because I know you worked with him on the Escort.
Correct.
Yes. What was it like working with Dan?
I actually didn't have a scene with Dan in that, and he just came in for one day. And I didn't direct that movie. Will Slocum directed that movie. I acted in that movie. But Dan, I just remember him just being so down for anything, right? And his scene required, it's the very first scene in the movie, and I don't want to give anything away, but it's definitely, a rated X scene. No nudity, but it's quite weird. And he was just, I'm here for it. Let's do it. And he was a true champ.
Oh, look at that. Oh, he's so good. He is so good. But now, we're not here to talk about Dan Bacadal, as awesome as he is. We're here to talk about you, who is equally as awesome.
Thank you.
Yeah, so, as you say, originally from New York?
Originally from New York, yes. Been in LA 10 years now.
Oh, nice. Yeah. When did the, what was the first thing that bit you first? Was it the writing, the directing, or the acting bug?
It was definitely the writing. However, the writing was just more of, I was always writing when I was younger, and I never grew up acting or anything like that. And I grew up in a town where, nobody did this stuff. Nobody was a filmmaker. I didn't know any filmmakers. I didn't know any actors. I didn't know any, professional screenwriters. So I never really considered it like a possibility as a career. And then, but I was always writing when I was younger. And in college, I took a couple of screenwriting classes, and that sort of opened my eyes into this sort of opportunity. And whether or not I was good at screenwriting, I told myself I was good. And that just sort of like brought me down this path of more of a creative career than I probably otherwise would have taken. And after graduation, I moved out to LA, and so it was the writing that really sort of got me into it at first, and then the acting and the other stuff, which again, I had no training in that stuff, but it was the writing that I actually had training in.
Well, if you think about like people growing up today when they have access to, as you were mentioning before we started this, like YouTube, you can go down the rabbit hole. There's so many things that you can, if you're curious about a subject, find out more information about it. But if you take it back a little earlier, if you're interested in a subject and you don't live in an area where there's a lot of people that are doing the thing that you'd like to learn more about, it is tough to get a lot of information.
It really is. It is. And we were just talking about it before the show, just the access that we have with YouTube. The amount of filmmaking knowledge that I have attained through YouTube far exceeds anything I've learned elsewhere. I never went to film school. I'm certainly doing, I learned by making short films and feature films. But the YouTube stuff that I found online just reinforces everything. And anytime you want to just, learn how to, film some piece of action, right? There are ways to do that. Anytime you have a question about cinematography, how to light something, you can find that on YouTube, and it's pretty fascinating.
That is probably the one I would dive deep to in the most. It's just the lighting. 'Cause I feel
Oh,
like,
yeah.
ugh. You can spend forever when you see all these, these master cinematographers, just the way they light a scene.
Yep.
You're like, oh, okay. I would just put a light, hope it works.
Yeah, yeah. No, it's there now. I mean, again, I've learned quite a bit from actually doing it, but I never took the approach of being so hands-on with the lighting as I will certainly in my next production, just because of everything that I've learned mostly in the last year. And even though I have such a great relationship with my cinematographer and trust in him, just being able to have the proper conversation with him about it when you're on set and prior to, and knowing the key terms and all that stuff.
Yeah.
Again, I didn't go to film school. Knowing, the difference between a fill light and a key light and this, that's all very important that I think every director should know. And YouTube has made that accessible to everyone.
True. I suppose if you're hiring, hopefully, the best people that you can, and you want to trust their opinion, but you still want to be able to have a conversation with them. Communication
is everything. It's everything. And you don't want to, because it's easy to say this is the end result of what I want it to look like. And then when they're off setting up the lights and with the grips and the gaffers and everything, and then you won't know until the edit, because they're going to say, yeah, well, when we do this and this, and you're just trusting. But sometimes, you do feel the necessity to, speak up, but you can only do so if you have the confidence to do that. And that's what, learning does, is it gives you the confidence to have the knowledge.
So as you're growing up and you're doing a lot of writing, were your parents, were they also involved in writing as well? Were they kind of involved in the arts, or were you
Absolutely not. No. I'm the black sheep of my family. No one else does the writing or the acting or any of it. And I think it was a little hard for them to sort of quantify any sort of success that I would have. When I first moved to LA, again, I knew no one. And so it was hard to see for them whether or not I even had any talent, because they didn't know anyone to sort of compare me to. So it was a lot of just figuring it out on my own and making great friends out here and mentors and just learning that way and figuring it out.
So I feel like the hardest thing and the most beneficial thing, though, is finding a mentor.
Yeah.
Somebody that you respect and admire that is willing to pass down their knowledge and help kind of guide you.
Yeah.
How easy was it for you to find mentors when you got out here?
It was more sort of accidental. Actually, I've got a funny story. Certainly I've never told this in public before. But so my screenwriting professor in college he would always talk about this writer that he taught in college as well at a different college. He taught at Yale. I was at Johns Hopkins, where he sort of did like a rotation between Yale, Penn, and Johns Hopkins. And so he was talking about this writer who had a movie coming out. The movie was The Breakup, and the writer, his name was Jeremy Gerlich. And he would always talk about Jeremy, how he taught him at Yale, and he was this and that, and great student and all that, and he's got this movie coming out. So we would use The Breakup as this sort of, or he was using The Breakup as this movie during that course for us to sort of break down and do all this analysis with. And I remember just being a naive 21-year-old junior in college, or senior perhaps that year, I forget. And I just found Jeremy on Facebook, and I just sent him a message. I'm like, hey, I've got Professor Lapadula, and he says great things about you, and I'm thinking about moving out to LA. And he wrote back immediately, and he was like, yeah, well, when you come out here, look me up, and we'll get together. And I was like, wow, this is incredible. This is not the Hollywood that you hear about. And so when I first moved out there, Jeremy was fantastic, and I interned for him, and now he's gone on to become this big writer director, and now he's a producer, and we've got a great relationship to this day. And he sort of actually introduced me to other people as well, and it was again, I don't. It takes some balls to kind of just all of a sudden, write up a Facebook message. Hey, saw you, or my professor was talking about you. But sometimes, most of the time, you're not going to get a response. But Jeremy is just such a great guy that he responded. And I think that also provided some confidence that, the gatekeepers aren't as, it's not as big of a hill as they say it is, but then you get out here and you realize, no, it's hard.
So when you get out here and you're meeting with Jeremy and stuff, are you, because certainly if you're pursuing acting, you're going to start taking maybe acting classes, going on auditions. For you, it was kind of coming in with a more writerly angle.
Correct.
Were you just writing spec scripts out here?
Yeah, exactly. And the acting stuff was more so. I just started I started writing, and my first job out here was working. I was working at a studio. So at 20th Century Fox, and I was assistant to a casting director. So I was just sort of like seeing the business that was my introduction to the business, is just seeing it from the studio side of things. And it was very interesting just to sort of see, like, I remember that year they were casting pilots for Modern Family and Glee, and so you see all these actors who have now become the big actors that they are, but back then when they were auditioning, Ty Burrell and some of these others, they weren't the people that they are today. And, you think about those moments and just how hard it is for them to hear, career actors, they're in their early 40s and, they're still sticking it out and they're working so hard, and then their lives change, just like that. And they're on the biggest show. And that happened with that show and Glee. And, but that sort of became a little contagious as well. As I saw it from the acting side, I was like, I just got inspired, and so I wanted to try it myself. And so as I was writing some like short films and directing them, I started putting myself in them. And they weren't good short films by any means, but I don't necessarily think. I think you got to go through, the struggle of not everyone has to make a bad short film, but I think. It helps to just sort of go through that struggle and find your voice. And yeah.
I feel like that is the biggest challenge, because as you just intake all these different things, whether it's radio, film, television, all these different books, you're taking in all these influences and then trying to figure out how do you find your own, how do you become the sum of those influences?
Oh, I think it's so hard to find your own voice. I think at first you start out sort of, again, this is all just coming from my experience, but you start out, writing in the voice of, some of the filmmakers and screenwriters that you admire. And then you just sort of like copying a little bit, and that's fine, borrowing, copying, whatever you want to call it. But then you have to, at some point, take what you've learned from that and then sort of infuse your own sort of being, what you are, who you are, into that. And that took me a little bit of time. It did.
I have to imagine also part of that too is just the confidence and trusting that I have something to offer and my voice deserves to be heard. It's is equally as valid as anybody else that I'm reading as well.
I think it all comes down to honesty and just being truthful to yourself, to your voice, what it is that you're trying to write, the story that you're telling, and if it's coming from an honest place, because everyone's got their own. We're all different. Every person on this planet is different. We're coming at things from a different perspective. But I think it's very easy to shy away from being authentic because people are scared. They fear, what happens if people see me and they don't like this version. And so I think that takes a little bit of time to sort of get past. And once you figure out what it is that you're sort of meant to be writing and the style that you're meant to be writing and the stories that you're meant to tell, there's no reason to be apologetic for it. You just do it.
So for you, how did it change for you in terms of when you first came out here and thinking, oh, these are the stories that I think I should be writing, to kind of finding your own voice and realize, like, no, this is the kind of road I want to travel down?
It's fun. So I've made 3 movies at this point, and wrote and produced and wrote all 3, produced all 3, directed 2 of them, and all of them have this theme of romance in them. And I'm excited to finally not do that for my next one. They're all very different genres within. They have different subgenres within that romance genre. So I think they separate themselves like that. But I think it's important to not be repetitive. but also, stick with what sort of works as well, because you want to be able to, for people to identify you as he's the person who could do that and do that well. And I think it's really hard. Not that you shouldn't, if you want to write sci-fi and you want to write romance and you want to write, sports movies, I think you should do all of it. But I think in starting out, it helps to just sort of get your footing somewhere and then build from that. At least, again, all my experience.
So you're writing and you're also directing some short films.
Correct.
When you decided to make the first feature,
Mm-hmm.
what was it? What point did you realize, like, all right, I think I can also direct this, and I'm ready to take the shot?
What happened was in 2011, I submitted a Doritos commercial contest for the Super Bowl, right?
Nice.
And so, I happened to be a finalist for that, and I won a bunch of money, and I had a script written already, and I was like, great, this is going to be the money that I use to make this movie. So it ended up being, very, very cheap movie, and because I was so naive and because I was so, nothing was going to stop me. I was like, yeah, I'm just going to, this is a movie I wrote. I'm going to star in it. I'm going to direct it. Not even thinking about how difficult it would be. But growing up, I admired filmmakers like Ed Burns, who's from my area. So, always, Brothers McMullen was a big movie. I remember being in the theater with my family, seeing that movie in 1995, I think. Or 93 maybe, but seeing what he could do on a $25,000 budget in his parents' home in Valley Stream, New York, I was like, all right, I'm going to go do that. So again, I think being naive actually is an asset that you could use, because if you are too practical, then you are going to start calculating the odds, and the odds are so heavily against you in this business. So I don't think you should be crazy, but I think you should sort of discard some of the intelligence that would tell you to maybe it's best to maybe hire a director to direct this movie since you've never directed a movie, or maybe hire just do things a little different. But I didn't, and I'm glad I didn't. Because that was the hardest thing in directing and acting in something. And we had a guerrilla crew. Some days we'd have, on that movie in particular, we had some days we had a crew of 5, and some days we had a crew of 15. But we were just running and gunning around LA, and I had no idea what I was doing. But the movie sort of worked, and it got me my first agent, and that helped me. That helped me get financing for my second movie, and I sort of caught the acting bug after that movie, and I was being sent out on a lot of big TV sort of stuff, acting auditions, and I just caught the acting bug, and so directing became, I didn't really care so much about directing during that time period. I was writing a lot and I was auditioning a lot, and so for the second movie that I did, The Escort, I decided not to direct that. And then for this last movie, I actually wrote the main role for myself, because I started writing it back in 2014. But then I just sort of fell out of love with acting. And I don't even know I was ever really in love with it for the right reasons. Mm-hmm. I think I could play a character very well, but I didn't really care to really stretch outside of that character. And it just made me sort of realize how important storytelling from just an overall standpoint was so important to me, and sort of having control of the whole process from writing through distribution, everything in between, to editing, directing, and everything, composing. I don't edit, I don't compose, but being involved in those processes. And it just made me realize how important that was to me. And for this movie, Brampton Zone, I just realized that, we have 15 days to make this movie, and we don't have time to watch playback after each scene for me if I am going to act in this movie, right? Mm-hmm. I'm going to have to go back around the camera, play out the scene again. So you were literally, if you were to do that for every scene, a 15-day shoot now becomes a 30-day shoot. We just didn't have the time, the resources for that. And I'm glad we didn't, because we ended up casting a fantastic actor, Alex Russell, and I think the movie is so much better for it. Alex owned that character, and I owned being the director. If I was doing both roles, I would not really own either one at the same time, or it would be very hard to do that, being in every single scene.
Well, for you, to jump back to The Escort, after you'd already directed your first film and you decided, I'm just going to act in this one, was it easy for you to take that step back and just be an actor in that film?
It was actually, because my first movie took a year to edit, because we had no money, and in the editing process, we actually I ended up reshooting some scenes or doing some additional scenes, and again we could do that because we had a crew of 3. My producer was also my cinematographer on that movie, and it was a very small movie, and we could afford to do that. But the editing process again took a year, and I hated that. I had zero patience for it then. Because I was just like, no, I want to get this movie out there and I want to do something else. And thinking about that long editing process, that long post process, I was like, I don't have a year. I can't, be editing this movie for a year. But it was a very different process, the second movie, because we were just more on a succinct schedule. And so, because again, I sort of had this bad taste of the post production, and again, it was a great experience, but it was just a long process. I was like, I don't want to edit, I don't want to do all that, and I'm focused on the acting right now. Like, let's get someone else, someone good, and we ended up getting Will Slocum, who directed a really great movie in it, and I think that worked out for that movie, and I'm excited. Where I'm appreciative that was the decision I did make, because if I did direct it, I don't know if I would have directed this next one, because maybe I would have thought, oh, okay, maybe I'm just going to be an actor, or I don't know, just things sort of just happened the way they did, and I'm glad they did, and it sort of reinvigorated my sort of love and appreciation for directing. So
we come to Brampton Zone, which is great. It centers around minor league baseball. So I know you, as we before we started rolling on this, you had mentioned kind of throwing it back to a nice Kevin Costner film, like a Bull Durham or something like that. Yeah. But without the baseball. What was it about that genre?
Well, there's some for our baseball fans out there. There's some baseball.
Balls are being hit in this film for sure. Absolutely.
Yeah.
But what was it about the baseball genre that's for the type of stories that I like to tell? This is also a genre of all the different sports that I would want to put in. Is there something kind of romantic, more kind of baseball that kind of fits more that kind of than say football?
Actually,
or basketball?
It was because of the minor league and major league separation. And I wrote this movie sort of as I was nearing 30, and I had been out here for about 6 or 7 years at that time, and I was sort of having my own sort of frustrations and going, that every person who goes out to LA to try and, make it as they do, you sort of realize and you think about everything that you sort of sacrifice to be out here. Right. And so you want to be successful and you want to make it or at least, fulfill the dreams that you set out for yourself. And as I was just nearing 30, I was just kind of thinking a lot about that. And so I just decided to write about a character going through this, but I did not want to do anything to do with this business at all, because I just didn't. And I happen to love movies about the industry, but I just didn't want to make one, not at that time. And so I started thinking about it through filtered through the prism of sports, and baseball just had that clear line between major league and minor league baseball, and how these minor leaguers, how difficult the struggle is, and how you could be in the minor leagues for 10, 12, 15 years. And I just thought that was a great comparison to this business. And then I just sort of did a deep dive into minor league baseball and read some great books on it, and I just, and obviously there's some fantastic minor league baseball movies, including Bull Durham. And so I just decided to do that.
Well, I guess that must be part of it too, when you're considering a story that you want to write, or a story you just at least want to tell, is that it is, if you're going to take it all the way from initial idea all the way through post, that is a long commitment. So you've got to be really passionate about this idea. So for you saying, I don't want to really tell it about necessarily the entertainment industry, that doesn't really excite me to know that. Yeah, so why would I want to commit that amount of time to a story that I'm not really passionate about?
Of course, yeah, and it's not that I love movies about this industry.
Yeah.
Get short. I mean, there's so many, but I don't know. Yeah, honestly, the character in my first movie was a screenwriter, and I kind of explored that a little bit, and so I didn't want to, just sort of rehash something. And the prospect of baseball, quite honestly, it got me really excited, and the visuals that we could, how we could tell that visually. And you've seen the movie, so you've seen the attention to detail that the protagonist takes in terms of like his craft, and the way that we were able to show that on screen, the way we're able to film that. I don't know if you're really able to do that with a writer sitting at his desk,
Yeah.
And so the prospect of those visuals got me really excited.
So I have to admit, just before we even get to actually the casting and the filming, the actual writing part, how much do you enjoy when you get a chance to just do a deep dive? Do you enjoy that? Like, I want to go down the rabbit hole, and I've got this amount of time, and I'm going to love every second of it.
Yeah. No, it's a love-hate relationship with writing. For me, it's all about getting to the production and directing and making a movie. The writing is just this necessary evil that you have to, it's this video game that you have to go through and go through all these levels to finally get to, win the coin at the end and they, for you to be able to make the movie. There are moments when you're in it and things are flowing and it's great and you feel great and you're like, oh, I nailed that scene. And there's nothing better than finishing a first draft and you're like, this is good. This is going to be the first movie ever that doesn't need to be rewritten. Meanwhile, I rewrote that movie probably 10 times at least, or at least, it's different acts of the movie. But for me, it's a love-hate relationship. Again, when I didn't know anything about directing, when I was just a writer, it was everything. But now that directing is and making the movie is just so important to me. I just get so excited about being on set. But the truth is that the writing is the blueprint, and it's all about those details. And you cannot, and I've never directed something that I've never written. And so, that writing process really is that first opportunity to go through, to see the movie in your head. And so it's absolutely necessary, in my opinion.
Do you feel that as you're also directing, especially since you're directing your own work, that you become less precious about the script because you know that while you're actually filming, things are going to happen that you can adapt and change the story that you're trying to tell, given the circumstances that are happening at the moment?
Are you saying as opposed to not having written it and then worried about getting a writer?
Or it's like, no, this is my script, guys. We're sticking to exactly everything that I wrote.
Yeah, no, I'm really not like that. I really like it to be a collaborative sort of. I like the whole production to be collaborative. I want each actor to own their character, and by the end of filming the movie, I would expect that they know their characters better than I do, because they've done all the backstories on them. And even though as the writer, I generally do some pretty in-depth work on their backstories. The actors, especially, for this movie, we got so fortunate to work with the actors who we got. They are just, their attention to detail is something that I've really yet to see, and they care so much about those characters. So, but when it actually comes to saying the words, they're basically going to be the words that are there. But if someone has an issue with saying something, then I want to talk about it. I want to change it. I want to, I want to make it so that they're comfortable saying it. And I've actually been lucky. I haven't run into a situation where, at least on this movie, where an actor was like, no, it just doesn't feel right. And I don't think that was because any of them were scared to say that to me, because they would have. I'm not a very scary guy. But I think perhaps it was just, we were all in agreement that, what was there is what was probably best for them to say at that time. But I do have a funny story. The lead of our movie, Alex, he we'd met a couple of times before we started shooting. We started shooting in May of 2017, and I hired Alex, I think, in April. And he had just finished shooting a pilot, and we had talked about the script and so much, and he was really excited to do it. And he's like, "Oh, dude, I love it. It's great. It's fantastic. It's gonna be great." And so then, like 3 days before we're about to go into production, he gives me a call. He's like, "Hey, could we just like meet up? I just have some ideas on the script and all this stuff." And I'm like, "Oh man," I'm thinking to myself. I mean, I say to him, "Yeah, let's definitely meet over coffee." But I'm thinking to myself, we've met like 4 times before. Like, you couldn't have brought that up then, and instead of 3 days before production. And then we meet. And he's like, "Hey, so you see this like right here? Would you mind if I like literally just change this word to that? Like literally change the to and stuff like that?" And I'm like, "Oh, these are the issues that you want to talk about?" Yes, absolutely. If it's easier coming out of your mouth saying it in this sequence, go right ahead. But I just thought that was, again, it's just an actor who cares so much about each little detail. But I really do encourage collaboration. But again, because we on a 15-day schedule, we're shooting on average it was like 7 pages a day. But some days we had 4 pages, and some days we had 13. So we don't have a lot of time on set to really change much, and we don't have the resources for rehearsals. So it's pretty much we're all working at a very fast pace. So. Yeah. I mean, I think I got really lucky on this movie, and I hope to be half as fortunate going forward, because there just weren't those sorts of issues between actor and director. And I shouldn't say they're issues, but we're an actor's asking to change a bunch of lines. I just haven't run into that situation.
For you, of course, a film that is a romantic film, but also, as we're talking about, in the world of baseball.
Yeah.
But there's not as much baseball in here. So, and of course, you're saying you have a 15-day schedule.
Yep.
A lot of stuff to get done that you want to do, especially with the budget that you're working with. When you were first writing the script, when you can be pie in the sky about it,
right,
was there more baseball? And then as it gets closer, you realize, well, we're going to pare back the kind of non-essential baseball elements and really just focus in on these 2 people.
No, actually, there wasn't. I kind of got excited about making a baseball movie that's not about baseball. It's about like the mechanics. It's about the process behind it. And that's I didn't set out, like we were talking about before, I didn't set out to make a baseball movie. Baseball just happened to be the metaphor that sort of like perfectly fit into the story that I wanted to tell. And what I was more interested in was the psyche of our protagonist, and like how he sort of lives with his decisions. That's what I cared about. And, the baseball stuff was, we did have some, like literally some weight room stuff that I knew would have been easy to film. And it was just sort of like to go into, more of his daily routine, which we just didn't have time to shoot. But actual like baseball field stuff, we just didn't. It honestly never really crossed my mind that we were going to make that movie, because I think that just sets up a different level of expectation, because now you are really making a baseball movie, and as we were talking about before, now you just get compared to all these other movies, and without the proper resources to really film it, it's not really something that I really cared to do.
Well, we do start off with Alex plays Dustin, who 12 years in the minors.
Yeah.
That is an interesting lifestyle, especially when it has gone on for that long, to live that sort of life where you commit yourself to something so fully that if your time has come and it's time to move on with life, you really have no preparation for anything else to do in life. Like the question is like, what else? What do I do? I don't know what else to do.
Yeah, it's very difficult, and in my research in minor league baseball, this is a real thing. I mean, like these guys, they are really in the minors for 10, 12, 15 years, and you hear about it in the NFL, you hear about it in all sorts of different professional sports where they never prepared for life after the sport that they're playing, and because they were just so wrapped up in it. And I'm of the belief system that if you are trying to be great at anything, you really kind of have to put blinders on. If you're just not naturally gifted, where you can, be a jack of all trades and have that sort of perfect balance between, family and your work and all the other aspects of life. I think you really kind of have to put blinders on and really go after it. That doesn't mean disrespect people. That doesn't mean, any of that stuff that sometimes we hear from these, geniuses that are just, they're so selfish, and they just don't care about other people. But I'm just saying, in terms of what it is that they're doing, their craft, they're just so focused on that. And so when you are in that, your own little tunnel, you can't think too much about the future, and you have to be 2 feet in. And so all of a sudden you're 2 feet in, then you wake up and it's 12 years later. And so that's a wake up call.
And certainly it is, just in terms of going back home and kind of resuming the kind of life that you left, where 12 years have passed, and friends, you're thinking, hey, I could just call up. Friends have moved on. They've gotten married. Right. They've had a whole life that's gone through these 12 years. It's not just as simple as like, oh, we stayed in stasis while you were gone. Right. And now we're just going to come back out and we're going to be exactly how you remember everything. Yeah.
It's actually one of the aspects of the film that I really like the most is about this guy who, he thinks, all right, he's going to return home, and, everything's just going to be the same. And that's just not the case. Like, nobody, like, as much as you think people care about where it is that you are in your life and, what it is that you're up to, they don't. They have their own lives that they're consumed with, and they're moving on. It's not that they don't care. It's just that they're prioritizing their lives. And this character, who's a flawed character, and I love the character so much, but he's very flawed, which is one of the, reasons why I do believe in the movie, is because he's just a, he's not like a good old American boy who's, makes all the right decisions and is, is going to go return home to win back the girl. And like the movie doesn't play out like, the typical movie that you would expect when reading the log line for this. And this guy is a very flawed character, but he's a good person. And so, but it takes some learning for him to sort of get used to the fact that people just don't care about, they don't have time to care about where he is. And he's got to figure this out for himself.
For you, as you're mentioning, like if you were to read the log line of this film, and it wouldn't necessarily go in the direction that you'd think just by reading it. Yeah. For you, was that already conceived as when you first thought of the initial idea for this film, where the twists and turns would take, that it would kind of go against expectations? Or is that something through the writing process, more of those like, oh yeah, the characters are telling me to go in this direction?
To be honest, I didn't write a complete, usually I like to write a complete log line before writing the movie, just so you have that 2 to 3 sentences of exactly what it is. And even in writing I think the log line tells the first half of the movie, but it doesn't tell the second half of the movie. But I didn't set out to answer your question, I didn't set out to put the twists and turns where they do happen. That wasn't really top of mind when starting page 1. That just sort of naturally happened throughout the writing process. And it all came about just, again, going back to that truth and honesty thing, and keeping this as truthful as it should be, based on what the characters have done and their actions up until that point.
Does it have also something to play with it? You're saying finding your own voice, because you would think these sorts of films, if you kind of read the logline and kind of expectations, that's almost like the safe way to go. Like, people watch these films because they like that sort of story. Right. So that's a safe bet. If I kind of just go in that lane, hey, maybe it's a lot of people want to invest, or it could be a wider distribution. Is it then for you to like, no, I got to be honest with myself. That's not. I wanted to do something different with that type of story.
Right. God, I really don't want to say too much without giving too much. Absolutely, giving too much of the movie away. And this isn't. This isn't the usual suspects here. There's not that many twists and turns, but
Kevin Spacey is in this movie at the end. I'm sorry, I shouldn't have said
that. He's not. He is not.
No, he's not.
But it's for this one, because the themes were so personal to me, the plot points are not personal to my life. I don't have a strained relationship with my friends or an ex-girlfriend or anything like that. But I saw a lot of how my life could have gone had I made certain choices, right? And that's the character that I did right. But for this movie, I really did want to keep it as truthful as possible, and it really is. The last movie that I wrote was just more of a fun rom-com that didn't really, it's a rom-com. You're gonna have your happy ending, and certain things are gonna happen at certain points in the movie because that's what the audiences are expected to see. But this, I just wanted to be honest. And again, it wasn't to let's throw in this twist here because, the audiences aren't expecting it. It all comes back to what would the character really do in the situation based on, their past and based on what it is that they hold, what their priorities are.
For this, it's not just, of course, we've got Dustin, Alex, played by Alex Russell, but you've got Rose McIver in there playing his former girlfriend.
Yeah.
And we've also got the incredible Jean Smart.
Oh, my God.
So
Incredible.
for you, you've also had Bruce Campbell in your earlier film, The Escort, but then you also get a chance to have Jean Smart for this. How excited were you when you actually say, hey, it'd be cool if we approach Jean Smart? And then she says, yeah, I'll do it.
Yeah. Through the casting process, you usually go out to actors who maybe a reach. And then you kind of know it and you expect to, all right, you already have your list after, you're expecting the no. And our casting directors, our great casting directors on this, Lauren and Jordan Batts, they were like, well, what about Jean Smart for this? And I was like, hey, if you can get Jean Smart, let's do it. As they're sending it out to Jean Smart, I'm already thinking about, all right, who we're going to go out to next once Jean says no. And then I got an email saying that Jean is interested. And that was unbelievable. And it all came down to sort of rearranging our schedule. Can we get Jean, because she shot 5 days, so can we get it in 5 consecutive days? Because she was actually shooting another. It was in between a movie that she had some time off. Oh wow! Yeah, she just loves to work. And so we rearranged a schedule for her, and she was just an absolute delight. She really, and because she was there on day one, she really helped set the tone and sort of gave the movie some gravitas, some respect within our production. Just because she was just that beautiful soul on set, who she cared so much. And she on her last day, she made, the cast and crew cookies and everything. And she's the mom that you want to have in real life and in your movies. So my mom's fantastic, but Jean would be a very, very, very close second.
Did your mom make you cookies after this film wrap?
No, she didn't.
Come on.
Yeah,
what's going on?
I know.
So the other relationship that I like in there is that is between Dustin as well as Cody. I thought that was who could possibly potentially be a stepbrother coming up, but that dynamic, I just thought I really enjoyed that relationship. What in terms of kind of crafting the story, what was it about those particular characters that said I kind of like the way these two resonated? It'd be interesting to explore a friendship.
Yeah. So again, going back to Dustin, he returns home and he thinks that he's just going to be able to hang out with his old friends again, and life's just going to go back to how it was in high school. And I wanted to make it so that the only people who wanted to hang out with him were people who he didn't really want to hang out with at first. And so that drives conflict and interesting scenes and all that. And so Cody's character, so Jean Smart's character is dating a new guy, and the new guy has a 12-year-old son, and that's who Cody is for our audience out there. And I just like this idea of, obviously Alex, he's not approving of his mom dating someone new, and, the dad passed away a couple of years earlier, and he's just not able to come to grips with the fact that the mom is moving on, and Dustin's not able to. But Cody, played by Carter Hastings, he just did such a wonderful job, and he's got this old soul to him, and he and Alex just had great chemistry.
I find myself enjoying more of those types of performances that like with Cody, where it's, I feel like too often you see in films and even television shows the younger child is going to be like, I'm the sassy kid that's going to talk smack to everybody. Right. But just to see no, this is just a normal kid that you would see out in the world, that would be, just very easy to strike up a conversation with, and it doesn't feel like it's going to be like I'm one-upping you or I'm telling you off.
Right. Yeah. In movies, it's a lot of movies these days have young kids saying curse words, and which is I laugh a lot. When there are a lot of movies that I love that have that. I just didn't want to necessarily do that with this. I just wanted to have a nice little relationship between these potential two brothers. And Dustin kind of sees a little of himself in this kid, and I just thought it would be interesting how Dustin sort of mentors him, and if he sort of directs him in the way that I don't know, I just thought it would be a cool opportunity to see if Dustin would be selfless, and here's a very selfish character, and the Cody represented an opportunity for Dustin to just think outside of himself for once.
There are many other characters throughout the course. Of course, we've got Gavin, the one childhood friend who does want to hang out, who I guess seems sketchy to me. And he already what I like is that he looks just older than Dustin. So it's like, all right, how long have you been around?
So so the role of Gavin, played by the incredible Kevin Linehan. Kevin's a dear friend of mine, and he's the funniest person I've ever met in my life. So I wrote this role for him. I still had him audition just because I needed to see tonally, because Kevin, a lot of his training and the stuff that he's done in his past has been very broad. And so I just wanted to see, because our movie isn't, a broad network sitcom. I wanted to see if it would work chemistry wise. And he absolutely nailed it when I asked him to come in for it. But so he plays this 40-year-old sort of Brampton lifer who used to work at the Blockbuster until it closed down, and now works at the bowling alley, and he still wears his Brampton Letterman jacket around town. And the backstory for him was he used to throw the high school kids parties all the time, and so that's why Dustin and he know each other. But there's about a 10 to 12 year age gap in between them. But I just thought that Gavin's character added some levity to perhaps some of the darker themes of the movie.
Well, we also have an appearance by yourself in the film.
Yeah.
Yes. Playing Robbie.
Yeah.
Tell me about this, because you're a real estate agent in the film.
Yeah.
But when you give your business card, it's keeping it real estate.
Give it a real estate. Yeah.
Is that yours, or did you see that somewhere?
No. That was an internet search.
I was like, that made me laugh. I was like, all right.
We went through about 10 different sort of goofy taglines like that, and that was one I just saw. Let's do that one. And that's not my real business card. That's a made up card. But again, just another character from Dustin's past who we just see the disconnect with. He's newly married, and he invited Dustin to the wedding, which is surprising to Dustin at the time. But Robbie was like, no, I sent you some calls and emails and the whole thing, and again, just shows Dustin's how selfish he was while in pursuit of the major leagues.
Now we also, of course, the story real quick as we're wrapping up here is that Dustin's ex-girlfriend is now kind of in a relationship with another person, and they're getting engaged. Yeah. I feel like that's a tough role to cast, because stereotypically you think like, oh, if we're telling this kind of story, then we've got to make sure that the fiancé is just a total jerk. Yeah. So that we can see like, no, she shouldn't be with him. She should be with Dustin. But for you bring in Scott Porter for this, who brings such humanity to stuff. So it's a person that he can bring both the positives and negatives of a character and make it a full fleshed out human being. So you can see like this is a nice guy, but he has some flaws. I mean, he's not perfect, but he's not a total awful person.
Yeah, you're exactly right. Like, I wanted to go against type for the prototypical sort of bad guy in the movie. Our movie doesn't have a bad guy. Scott's a very good guy. And he's got some quirks to him. His character is definitely, he's not perfect like all of our characters. They're not perfect. But Scott did such a great job just in terms of, I mean, he's so funny in the movie. But he's just like he's the guy who, you know, every mom would want their daughter to marry. And I mean, without giving too much away, he's just an affable guy, and everyone loves him. But if you know, and everyone tells Dustin, "No, you're gonna love this guy." But of course, Dustin's gonna hate this guy. And so, because we see the movie through Dustin's eyes, you know, again, he's supposed to be a bad guy, but he's really not. But I think it still works as to who we're rooting for in the movie. I think.
Yeah, I think it does too, and it just again, it feels just more true to life, where it's nobody is a monster 24 hours a day. There are things that they care about, and people are nice people, and that can be very true to life. And you know, the drama is then when you have somebody has to choose between two people that are both flawed,
right?
But they're really nice people though. To begin with. It makes it, I feel like, a much more interesting drama to watch.
Yeah. And Rose McIver, who's just so incredible, and I mean, she really could, you know, she's got a couple of scenes where she's got to cry, and you know, she cries, and off camera, you know, we call cut, and you know, she's back to, you know, chirpy Rose, and she's just so fun and loving, and she's just able to turn it on and turn it off so quickly. And that's, you know, another example of like the great type of actor that we had on our movie, which goes again across the board. They're all so dedicated and good.
That is awesome. Yeah. So now, as we're wrapping up, the film is out in theaters October 19th, as well as on digital as well. But what do you have coming up next?
I'm working on about 5 different things right now. A couple of TV things that I'm pitching at the moment. And then putting together my next indie film, and then I've got something else that I wrote that it's all kind of like happening at the time where I really can't talk about it.
Absolutely, understood.
But I hope something happens with one of the 5 soon, and that's what you gotta do. You have to have, you know, a lot of things going on, and then hopefully one hits.
Well, if they want to keep up to date with all you're working on, or any with Brampton Zone, any info you have on that, where's the best place to find you?
You can find me very hard. It's at Michael Doneger for Instagram and Twitter. I don't tweet a lot, but Instagram you can find me.
All right, we have little Weezer.
Oh, I love the closeout.
That's right. There you go.
I'm gonna go in the car and it's gonna be playing. I know it.
Ladies and gentlemen, I've been your host, Frank Moran. Follow me on Twitter and Instagram at HappyGoJaggy. Make sure you check out Branton Zone. It is a very fun watch. And it goes some directions that you're not necessarily expecting. So check it out when it comes out October 19th in theaters and on digital. So we'll see you next time here on Popcorn Talk with another edition of iTalk Movies. Bye, everybody.
From producers Maria Menounos, Kevin Undergaro, Phil Svitek, and the entire Popcorn Talk Network, we would like to thank you for tuning in. For questions or comments, be sure to visit popcorntalk.com. I'm Sir Richard Wentworth, and this has been a presentation of the Popcorn Talk Network.
The views expressed herein are those of the hosts only and do not necessarily reflect the views of the Popcorn Talk Network or its owners or principals.